Well, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Bruce McDonald, and pretty sure this is the Talamanca Review, unless somebody has stolen my show. Hope you're enjoying it. Hope you're getting something out of it. When I say enjoy, I'm not talking about, consumer feedback. I mean, I hope you're getting something out of the podcast. I kind of took a couple days off there because I got a little juiced up with work, and that'll happen once or twice more before the end of June. Just get a little bit busy and have to go into these concentration vacuums, and I can't really get back to the podcasting space. Yeah, I wish I could multitask like that, but I figured out a long time ago that I'm a unitasker. you know, in a world of multitasking, I'm a unitasker. I'm really only good for one thing at a time. And right now that's podcasting, but I just finished up this big client, really unbelievably cool client. Oh, hold on a sec there. I got some coffee coming. Aquí, mi amor. Gracias. Muchas gracias. Buenas noches.
Te amo.
Uh-huh. Out of coffee. I love my little cubbyhole office here. It's so cool, man. It's cool to meditate in here. It's just cool to hang out in here. It used to be my bodega where I stored my wheelbarrow and my chainsaw and all my tools and stuff. And just cleaned it up a little bit and tiled the floor, and Bob's your uncle, and here I am. I like it because it's like a completely isolated little building. Tiny, man. I mean, this is probably like 150, 160 square feet. Big enough though, big enough. So, well, we're really kind of getting in. I'm doing Reality of Imagination Part 3 tonight. But before, I got to work my way into my podcast, right? It's kind of like have to do this sort of verbal foreplay before I just get primed up. And, I'll give you my take on, what's going on in the United States. Well, Los Angeles, I think that what Gavin Newsom is doing is just absolutely despicable. I think this is the kind of opposition that the Trump administration is going to expect. I wish the man all power to get done what he needs to get done, man. And this is also openly acknowledging that he probably is on the flight logs for Epstein Island, and that he's not a good person, or has not been a good person his whole life. I don't think he's been as bad as some of them. I don't think he's in the cult per se. He's what they call in the mob a rounder. He's been hanging around that world, but never really got initiated into it. But I believe that he's been called to do what he's doing now. And I know that sounds strange. A lot of people, they don't understand my position on Trump. I don't have any idea what MAGA is, Make America Great Again, or all the slogans and nonsense he has to come up with to do what he wants to do. But I just feel in my heart and in my gut and in my soul that he's the only chance that America has, and that the powers of organized destruction that have been working on America since 9/11, formally, informally, they laid out the plans long before that. You could say it really started at, free trade. And I don't think that he wants to let America go down. And make no mistake about it, America, Canada, Australia, Britain are marked to go down. Now you may say, hey, Bruce, what kind of a force on this planet could do this? Like, are these not the most powerful countries in the world when they're unified with their technology, their economic productivity, their per capita productivity? Yeah. But what you're seeing is a window into what really runs the world. And it's not this window dressing. It's not this nonsense, It's something else. There's a hidden power, and that hidden power has decided that, number one, the West has to fall, and number two, specifically the white race needs to be either exterminated or seriously set back to about 10% of its population. What force on the planet could be doing this? I really don't know. I don't know. It's a very strange thing, There's also a theory out there that that this is rope-a-dope. You know what a rope-a-dope is? For those of you who follow boxing, the rope-a-dope was something that Muhammad Ali used to do. Muhammad Ali's abdomen was so well trained that he could guard his head, lean against the ropes, and let an opponent punch his body round after round after round after round, and just take the blows, because his abdomen was so well developed and so capable of absorbing the blows with the sit-ups he did and the abdominal work that he did. And then what would happen is the opponent would punch themselves out. They would gas themselves. They'd run out of energy after a few rounds. And when you run out of energy boxing, it's a critical thing, right? Because you can't even really lift your hands up to protect yourself. And then he would knock the guy out. And there is a possibility that this is a rope-a-dope. Let's say using an old sort of Kabbalistic Masonic technique for destroying your enemies, is you give your enemy an opportunity to destroy you. And if they take it, then you have license to, spiritually, you have license, or you have causative license or causal license within the reactive ironic mirror we live in. You have causal license to defend yourself, and there's no sin in it. There's no karma. There's no causal repercussion. So that might be what's going on now. I'm just, speculating on a hypothesis is all. I'm not really sure at this point. I don't meditate on things like this. I don't ask for clarity on things like this. I'm not really that interested, to be honest with you. So that could be one thing that's going on, is the rope-a-dope. Because I honestly don't see how they could run this world going in, unless they've got technology to augment people so significantly that you can take people that are relatively useless now and make them into useful or productive people. Or another alternative is they don't need people anymore, and they're going to the 500 million plan, right? 500 million people on the planet. I really don't know. I don't know. But I see things like LA, and I see what Newsom is doing, and it's just despicable to turn this into politics and to be trying to generate hatred for Trump. And they've been doing this whole crew, right? And it's, you know who this is, right? It's the Catamite Parade. And they're all fucking freaks. Macron, Trudeau, I'll bet you Carney's one as well. I'm sure he's a fucking Catamite, or he's railing the boys or something. They're all into that Greek shit. It's like a big part of their culture. And Newsom is some kind of freak behind doors as well. I absolutely promise you, there's no doubt in my mind. Okay, I don't even, where I'm coming from, right? I don't even think they're human anymore. I think they have bodies like us, but their consciousness is not what we would call human. I think that they're hybridized. I think that they're heavily influenced by reptilian genetics, which produces the homosexuality, right? Or the let's say, the bisexuality. In fact, the more you look at this stuff, when you look at when you understand what the reptilian consciousness is, I'm not talking about literally reptilians living under the ground or anything like this, but what the reptilian would be like in astral, okay? So the reptilian is yeah, I don't know what happened there. The reptilian is sort of asexual, right? And androgynous in the sense that they're not really male or female. They're both together, right? This is the nature of the reptilian genome. It's very unique on the planet. Let me just make sure I got this right, because okay, here we go. And this is actually quite interesting. Okay, so most reptiles reproduce sexually and have internal fertilization. Males have one or two penises that pass sperm from their cloaca to the cloaca of a female. Fertilization occurs within the cloaca, and fertilized eggs leave the female's body through the opening in the cloaca. Do reptiles reproduce asexually? Most reptiles reproduce sexually, although some are capable of asexual reproduction. Asexual reproduction has been identified in 6 families of lizards and 1 snake family. The sex of reptile offspring can be determined by the environment. Can male reptiles lay eggs? In general, incubation temperatures higher than about 89.6 degrees Fahrenheit, which is 32 degrees Celsius, transform genetically male reptiles into lizards that are functionally female, that is, capable of laying viable eggs. Wow, the lizard world is really kind of freaky, right? And so there you go. I mean, so a lot of these people, I mean, like Trudeau and these people, they're demonstrating a sort of lizard asexuality, a reptilian sexuality. That's also very much the Kabbalistic sexuality that they're talking about, okay, in the Kabbalah and the Talmud and other places as well. Not normal at all. And this is why I don't call it Torah Judaism. It's sort of like this cluster of black magic at the center of Judaism and at the center of Christianity in the form of the Jesuits in Catholicism and the Masons in Protestantism. It's all one religion, folks, okay? And when you get into it, because what it really is at the end of the day is reptilian theology, okay? And this goes back to what John Edmonds told me about the reptiles giving us black magic, okay? And this is why you have all the blood rituals and everything. So the reptilian culture is right in front of you. Always has been. It's in the Vatican now. That's why they have all those freaky pictures and everything. And the new temple is so freaky. All right, so enough of that. We're going to get on to the reality of imagination now, part 3, okay? Because I've had enough of a warm-up. So let's just recast what we've studied already, okay? So anything that is dreamed is real. Anything that is dreamed can become real. And we're talking about conceptualization and manifestation, right? All that crazy new age stuff. And they get a lot of it wrong, right? Or they isolate the potency of consciousness in such a self-serving way that the spiritual vitality of it, which would produce grace and calmness in you and the realization that we're loved by a creator, is neutered because the ego takes center stage, because the ego is what wants to manifest all the time, you know. So grasping at the unreal is therefore natural human behavior. So if anything that is dreamed is real, and anything that is dreamed can become real. Okay, so conceptualization and manifestation. So going into the imagination to find things to manifest, grasping at the unreal to make things real, is in a sense natural human behavior. It's naturally infantile human behavior. It's not spiritually mature behavior, but we're allowed to be spiritually immature. And remember that, okay? I mean, the myth of perfection is just that. And I think it's one of the greatest lies ever told. And it comes mainly from Christianity, that Christ was born perfect and he never sinned. And there's no way you could, and if he never sinned, it means he never went through a learning cycle. And if he never went through a learning cycle, it means he came here with all the knowledge, and he's not a good example for us because he wasn't really human, right? That's one of my big issues with Christianity, is just the myth of perfection, okay? And the myth that realized people, or people who come to some knowledge about consciousness or life or God, are always held up to this measurement, the perfect Christ. And that's why they created it, right? So human beings can't celebrate their own spirituality because we're all imperfect and only the Son of God was perfect. And it's a lie, okay? So how can I say this and at the same time say the Gospels are worth reading and the Gospels are worth trying to live up to? Because the spiritual message in the Gospel is really good, right? It's just the prevailing narrative myth of the Christ himself, Emmanuel or Yeshua, is just that, a myth, okay? That nobody is perfect. Nobody is perfect. People can become very close to perfect, saints and things like that, but nobody is really perfect. So longing forms questions, okay? And this is why we long for things, is to form questions. Because questions, remember, we've been over this a number of times on the Talamanca Review. In spiritual matters and in matters related to consciousness, questions are actually more important than answers, okay? Because by the law of manifestation, listen to what I'm saying about the reality of imagination. So the most potent thing that you can imagine, that you can bring into your interior life, your imagination is your interior life. It's true that it focuses on images, but language is a part of it as well, okay? And so the most important thing you can conceptualize for growth are questions. And this is why longing is in us, okay? Why do I long for something? Why do I long for this? Okay, because longing forms questions, and questions are the way we begin to understand how consciousness works. And all questions will be answered. God will answer all questions for you. It's almost an obligation, a rule of the creation. Okay, but you have to be paying attention because the question can come in sideways. It's not like FedEx is going to show up on your door and say, hey, package for Bruce McDonald, it's from God. Says here it's an answer to the question you asked on Monday. That's not how it works. You ask the question and you have to be very well aware of your consciousness field, both internally and externally, which are really the same thing, but we'll get into that later. And then the answer will come in and you'll know it because it'll connect with your heart and you'll go, yeah, that's the answer, and it'll just make sense. So when we have longing, we have want, and when we have want, we have suffering, and when we have suffering, we have fear. This is the whole chain of being human, right? Okay? It's that. So we know that we're not whole because where there is fear, there's want, and want is suffering. Creation longs for us, and we long for creation. Therefore, longing is natural, and creation too is suffering because creation too is growing. Okay? It's not just us that are growing. It's creation itself is growing. It's in a state of growth. Okay? Now, here's the part, I'm going over this again for the second time, but it gets really, you got to really pay attention to the language, okay? Because there's a subtlety to it. There's a sort of very nuanced subtlety to the language, okay? So longing is the reason of imagination and the reason for imagination, and yet there's absolutely no reason in imagination. Now, we've been over this, okay? So reason occurs when you have a subject and an object. So you have this pivot point. Here's me, here's reality. Now, if there's another person standing beside me, like my wife or one of my nieces and nephews, we're going to see the same objective reality, because the object reality we live in is the starting point for our understanding of reality. It seems solid, it seems immutable, but really our consciousness interacts with it. It's not as solid as you think, and you can alter it. Not in an immediate way like a biblical miracle or something like that, but you can work with it in a way, and it's malleable. Okay, reality is malleable, and you can work with it. So we're all looking at the same reality, like me, my wife, or me and one of my nieces and nephews. There's my computer screen, there's my TV, there's my iPad, here's my microphone. Anybody who was standing beside me right now would agree, yep, Bruce is telling the truth. All of these things are here. All of these things are part of the reality of his studio office, part of the object reality. And that's called a reasoning process. Okay? Well, let me, you know what? Because we're such sticklers for language here on the Talamanca Review. Reasoning definition. So it's a noun, actually, with the ing, the action of thinking about something in a logical, sensible way. Okay? So you can see why mysticism becomes illogical. And in an age of reason and science, not many people participate in mysticism anymore because we're taught not to, which is very detrimental to us, by the way. Because you need a certain percentage of people with mystical connection in every generation for the earth to be balanced. If everybody goes crazy and everybody conscripts themselves to rational, hard, rational subject-object relationships, the fulcrum by which our reality is leveraged doesn't function properly, and we run into a lot of trouble. Okay? And quite frankly, that's kind of what's going on now. Okay? Really, actually, big time in the 21st century. And they're exacerbating it to bring about the effect they want to, which is the plan that they've written down in the book of Revelation. So there's no reason in imagination because the thing that cannot see beyond itself cannot reason. We've been over this already as well. Then we get into the biology of imagination. So there's a lot of things feeding into our imagination, okay? So I make the point that a man dreams a woman because he must. The biological impulse is overwhelming in a man. The mandate to procreate when you're in a body as a man, especially as a young man, it's really... Women, if you're having a female incarnation, it's really hard to explain to you how forceful this impulse is. Like it is about all you can think about from about 18 to whenever, okay? And then if you're a mature man and you've led a contemplative life, not a celibate life, but a contemplative life, you actually enjoy going into your 50s because the testosterone reduction is welcome, because you get more of a cleared up mind, a cleared up perception, a cleared up consciousness, and you're not so focused on sex all the time, okay? So what's the distinction between wanting and longing? So a man wants a woman, and we ask the question, what does he want when he wants a woman? Does he want an end to longing? If wanting is of suffering, and longing is the spirit of imagination, and the imagination manifests through us, what can come to pass when we want to end longing? Okay, now we're going to get into some new material, okay? Same, I've just sort of covered what we went over in part 1 and part 2. Okay? When we dream, and dreaming is when we participate in the internal life. Okay? So to participate, this really means dream. Okay? So thinking or using images and contemplating is one thing. But dreaming is something else. Dreaming is when we surrender to the inner life and it takes us over to the point where we believe it to be real, just as we believe the outer life is real. Okay? So when you're in a dream, you're generally like 99.999% of the human population will believe the dream is real. Okay? If you learn to lucid dream, you never really go to sleep in your dreams. It's you're like the person that's dreaming is much more connected to the waking mind. Although there are times that the dreaming person can sort of subsume you, even when you get the ability to lucid dream. It's just a part of the process. So what I say, when we dream, we speak with heaven because dreams are the only language heaven has to speak with us. So when you go into that middle ground, the dream space, where you surrender the certitude of your object position as an incarnate being, and you go into the dream, and you believe the dream to be real, just as you believe your waking life is real, that is the point at which heaven is speaking to us. And when I say heaven here, I mean the higher regions. Or you could put unconscious in there. Your unconscious is speaking to you, but your unconscious is in fact a part of the external structure of reality. This is the great secret of the human unconscious. It's not a part of our brain that's dormant, as the hard sciences want you to believe. All the fucking idiots dumbing people up with pharmacology and things like this. That's not what it is. It's something else, okay? It's connecting to the external reality. The unconscious is the gateway that destroys the subject-object narrative and unifies the interior and exterior realities, which is the mystical journey, which is what you're trying to do, okay? They got all these words, like Deepak Chopra and Sadhguru and all these fucking idiotic people out there. They're enlightenment. I don't have a fucking clue what enlightenment is. I don't know what these people are talking about. Okay? Oh, all my chakras are aligned and I've raised my kundalini. I don't think that's a very pleasant experience. I don't think I'd even want that to happen to me. Okay? And it doesn't explain what's going on with consciousness and reality. I think enlightenment is the biggest load of bullshit out there, to be honest with you. And I think it's a completely separate path from what we would call God in the West. Okay? Anyway, so when we dream, we speak with heaven because dreams are the only language heaven has to speak with us. Okay, there's no other way for the unconscious or the other dimensions to communicate with us. Well, they are trying to communicate with us. It is trying to communicate with us through the unfoldment of our life in our physical reality, but most of us are too dense to pick up on that. You have to meditate to pick up on stuff like that. Okay? Most people don't meditate. And if they do, even a lot of people who meditate never pick up on it. I mean, that Israeli moron who's the right-hand catamite to Klaus Schwab at the World Economic Forum, Yuval Noah Harari, he alleges to practice Vipassana meditation 2 hours a day, and he has absolutely no mystical qualities to his consciousness whatsoever, which is very interesting to me, by the way. Very, very interesting to me, okay? And it says something about certain genomes on this planet, okay? And I think there are certain genomes for which no matter what they do, they can't really get to a really mystical understanding of reality. It's just not in them, and it's not in Harari, okay? I don't think there's a lot of catamites that get it, and that's why the catamites go for the magic and the ritual. Because that is the prohibited path. So the prohibited lifestyle takes the prohibited path to gain consciousness. You understand? Does that make sense? Kind of in my zone tonight. It's actually kind of flowing here. Okay, so dreams are unpolluted imagination, meaning there's no doubt in the imagination. They're exactly what the unconscious wanted you to experience, what the external objective wanted you to experience, okay? Always. Always. Anything that is dreamed is real, as we said at the beginning. If it can exist in dream, it can exist on earth. And that's across the board. We'll get into that more deeply in a future chapter of this series, okay? Now, heaven and earth work together in this matter. And here, heaven and earth mean the internal world that we think our subjectivity and our objectivity. But our subjectivity is not really fantasy, okay? And, you know, when you start to really contemplate what I'm saying, some things might fall in place for you. You know, I'm thinking here of the Gospels where Christ says the kingdom of heaven is within us. Okay? That's an important thing to understand. The kingdom of heaven is within us. And what he's saying is that this object realm called heaven is also within us. He's also corroborating object imagination, okay? Because nothing but imagination can exist within us, okay? Now, we can leave our bodies and travel in consciousness, but in a sense, that's traveling in imagination, okay? You can, and that's what the remote viewers do. That's a form of mental travel. It's beyond astral travel. Astral travel usually has the silver cord attached. Mental travel is beyond that. And the highest form of consciousness movement is travel directly by soul, the perception of soul, your core being. Okay? So heaven and earth work together in this manner. If it can exist in dream, it can exist on earth. Okay? And this is where you get idealism. So an idealist is somebody who imagines something without understanding the spiritual principles I'm explaining to you today. Well, I shouldn't say they don't understand it. They haven't, even without having articulated it, they understand that if they can see it, they can manifest it, okay? And we see this throughout history. In time and time again, whether it be the Mongols and their war campaigns, if they can see it, they can do it. Inventions. A lot of times when you read scientific biographies, if the scientist gets stumped on something, a lot of times the intensity with which they petition consciousness receives what I would call an awakened dream, an object dream, in which the dream explains the problem to them and they can understand and fix the problem. Okay? That's another example of awakened imagination. We get that all the time in science. The scientists themselves talk about this all the time. Okay? So creation is manifesting through us. Okay? We are being spoken to every moment we stand upon the earth. Remember what we talked about in the womb inseminated by Solomon, right? That human beings are the agency for what manifests on this earth. Okay? So when you have somebody going around doing sort of miraculous or paranormal things at will, a lot of times what's happening is they haven't learned to do that themselves, but they've connected their consciousness to something else. They're allowing another entity or being to enter into the consciousness space of their physical body. And once that alien consciousness, which is not part of the normal soul structure of the incarnation, has that anchoring in the body, it then can act upon the earth in these ways. Now, depending on your religious disposition, some religions would say, well, that's demonic, it's demonic, it's demonic. Not always. Sometimes it really is. I mean, Edgar Cayce is an example that comes to mind. That was a form of consciousness sharing. Okay? A lot of these New Age types, channeling is consciousness sharing. Okay? So you have, what was the big one from my generation? J.Z. Knight, out there on the West Coast in Washington State, in Olympia, Washington. She had her big compound and everything. And she was channeling, allegedly, this 50,000-year-old being called Ramtha. But you can't really gauge time on the other side the way we do here. You know, what is a 50,000-year-old being on the other side? if the moment you go over to the other side, you reconnect with all your past lives, well, then you're a multi-million-year-old being as a human being, okay? Especially if you're listening to the Talamanca Review, because I can pretty well assure you, if you're consistently drawn to this podcast, you are an aged soul, okay? So you're coming into the questions that are going to release you from the incarnation cycle, okay? But this idea of us being the agents of what comes into this world, this is an important responsibility that we've been given, human beings. And as far as I'm concerned, we shouldn't be sharing our consciousness with other entities. We shouldn't be allowing them to operate through our bodies. You can meet them in the spirit world, but always sort of protect your consciousness space as it pertains to your body, okay? And again, this is about the whole idea of portals and things like this. You know, people do these pilgrimages to go to these so-called holy sites where there might be a portal, right? Whether it be Egypt or Stonehenge or what have you, never for a moment stopping to realize that they're living inside a portal right now, that the body is its own portal. The body is the portal to higher consciousness. And higher consciousness achieved in the body is not the same as higher consciousness achieved out of the body, which is one of the reasons that we come into bodies and that we do incarnate, because it has to be done in a body. So, heaven and earth work together in this manner. Creation is manifesting through us. Okay? And we're being spoken to every moment we stand upon the earth. Every moment on this red dust is a moment of communion. It is the fusion of human beings, or the fusion of matter and spirit. Okay? And this is a kind of a spiritual event, and the energy we generate is really quite intense. In fact, I think it's, in many ways, there might be nothing like it. And a lot of the, well, let's just leave it at that. There might be nothing like it. Now, these moments are shared with creation. Every moment on this red dust is a moment of communion. Red dust is, the earth. It's Adam. In Hebrew, the word Adam literally translates to red dust. Red dust is also what the Buddhists call the physical plane, the earth, the red dust. Okay? So man and creation are in communion in these moments. So really, that's what you're trying to work towards, is the communion between your material existence and your spiritual existence. You want to fuse them into one thing. And this is done by continuous spiritual practice. This might be a suitable definition of enlightenment. Okay? But it has nothing to do with the whole chakra system and all that. That's just a bunch of Indian jerk-off Vedic yoga bullshit, and a lot of that stuff's just fucking useless. You don't need it, It's just stupid, and a lot of times, what it really is turning yourself into a junkie without actually using a drug. Right? Like, so you can just sort of get high off of the natural energy flows in the body. They talk about this a lot in the yogic system, the bliss state and everything, but I'm not sure that that's really what you want to be doing with your life. I think it's a little bit stupid. Now, let's go over this again, okay? So, when we dream, we speak with heaven, because dreams are the only language heaven has to speak with us, okay? So the higher consciousness always meets us in the middle. It meets us in the dream space, okay? Now, as you evolve in your journey through consciousness and your understanding of imagination, the higher consciousness can speak directly into your waking reality, and you will perceive it as a waking dream. So when I go to town and when I do things, or when I'm just walking around up here, I have experiences most people only have in dreams. Okay? And I can see the spirit and the material working together to tell me something. I've already told you, when anyone comes up here to visit me, whatever is inside of them just spills out. It just absolutely spills out, okay? And the reality, I addressed this a little bit about in the Land and Man podcast, okay? But you don't really have that in the West because the connection with the land has been taken away from you. And I mean spiritually and magically. That is what the birth certificate system is about. Okay? It's so that you don't have the right to communicate with the land and gain the support of the land in the growth of your consciousness and the security of your existence. And this is one of the reasons that shamanism was wiped out. Because shamanism as a religious force would not have allowed the transgressions that are taking place now to take place. And so they had to be destroyed. And this is why the native populations, and it's the entire continent, it's from the Arctic all the way down to the Antarctic, okay, or to the tip of Argentina, the southern tip of Argentina, which is a similar climate to Canada because you're getting close to the pole, right? All of the native culture was wiped out. From Canada through central, not wiped out, but put onto a reserve system and sidelined. And I think that this native consciousness was doing a tremendous amount of work balancing the world, okay? They weren't perfect, and some of the tribes went dark, and some of them got into the blood sacrifice, just like the Moloch worshippers and everything. So I'm not putting them up on a pedestal, but they certainly didn't tear up the world the way we do now, okay? They lived completely differently. And I think it was an important way of living and a very balanced way of living that allows for the growth of consciousness without the destruction of the host, which is our planet, okay? And it's no coincidence to me that European consciousness destroyed it, because I think the root of the evil in the world now is in the European consciousness. It's just an affectation of this whole Abrahamic system and the complete absence of any real spiritual life in the West now. And I don't care who you are. It's true for all of you, whether you're a Jew, a Christian, or a Muslim. It's not these are just systems of mind control. You can get pockets of multidimensionality within these religions, but not really, in my experience anyways. So they're systems of mind control, and they're systems of consciousness pollution, okay? So let's go over this idea again of this middle ground of consciousness, okay? So there's states you can go into in meditation as well where it's like a dream. It's like what you're seeing is perceived by the consciousness as real. But it's a different state than sleeping because you're not really asleep. But it's hard to explain. It really has to be experienced. They got a bunch of Indian words, but I'm not sure that the Indian words are really what I'm looking for. I'm not sure if I would call it what they call samadhi or anything like that. But you can go into these internal states and you can be given knowledge imagistically. You can be spoken to in this middling language of pure image with no phonetics, no spoken sound, no breath through vocal cords. Okay, none of this primitive communication technology. It's purely imagistic. Okay, and it's a very, very powerful language, extremely powerful. Okay, and this is why I say when we dream, we speak with heaven. Because in this middle ground, through the language of images, we get a much clearer and much more potent language with which to communicate with whatever we're communicating with. Okay? Very, very powerful. Okay? So human beings are supposed to be like a fuse between the material and the spiritual, just what a fuse does in a fuse box. Okay? But that's not really how we live anymore. The way we live now is more like a fuse in their box, in the controllers of this society, okay? And I think the trade-off is horrible. I think it's a bunch of bullshit, and I think it should be sort of cast out, if you ask me. But, people are going to do what they're going to do, and they're quite happy with it. So the ground beneath our feet changes at every moment. The changes are recorded in time. This creates a reason for space. This is the beginning of ritual. This is how we hold moments hostage. The moment held hostage cannot sate longing. It does not commune properly with imagination. We say of these moments, this is not real. But how can this be so? How can this or that be unreal? And I'll leave that question to the next part of Reality as Imagination. I'm Bruce McDonald, and this has been the Talamanca Review.